Thank you for the introduction. I see a lot of you here. Thank you for your patience. Ready to do one more? Cool. So, how you doing? Everybody good? Just before you get to know me, I want to get to know all of you first. So, how many testers do we have in the room? Show of hands. Okay. Who works in a Scrum team with developers? Okay. Who has done or is doing automation? Who would like to do automation? Okay, cool. That's great. Let's get started. So, as I said, about myself. So, I used to be a developer for 6 years. I coded in .NET, believe it or not. And back in 2011, I kind of decided to switch careers. There weren't any .NET developer roles available at that point, and I kind of just went for it, you know, and applied for this company, which is called Betfair Romania, and I applied as a tester. I had no idea what testing was. I was like, I know how to write code, I might be good at automation, but I don't know what it is. And I started working with Java, testing G, I did performance testing and whatnot. And currently, I'm a delivery manager, currently responsible for 3 teams in Romania, in Cluj. Betfair Romania is part of Petty Power Betfair Group, not sure if you heard of it. We're about 1,200 in technology across the world, in 5 different locations. Back when I started in Cluj, in Romania, probably we were 120, now we're about 500 or 600. I joined a team, a Scrum team, together with developers, but they were not doing automation. They were, yeah, we're going to test this project. And then somewhere in the corner, there was another team who was the automation depth team. Fancy name. Nobody knew what they did. And they, you know, wrote some code and wrote some stuff, and then someone in teams decided, hey, we should automate our projects as well. They wrote other codes in another programming language. Nobody actually knew what other teams were doing. Everyone was siloed. Everyone was doing their own thing. People were doing SOAP UI calls, like calls in HTTP in their tests. That was how bad it was. So basically, it was a business need as well as a team need that we need to have more test coverage for our tests. It was really, our releases were pretty buggy at that point, I'm ashamed to say. And we thought that improving our test coverage would actually, you know, improve our releases as well. We started in bits and pieces. We did things really slow. Releases took a long time. We had a one-day release at that point, and we did it only once a month. It was a pain to test a service you didn't work on, because every little team did stuff their own way. You would go in and try to test or cover for your colleague and test something, but you didn't know what tests to run. How are they supposed to do? Are they passing or not passing? What is there to do? At one point, people used to copy and paste files from one project to another, just to be able to construct their classes and whatnot. So that led to a lot of problems at that time. And as I said, we had pretty buggy things, and it took a lot of time to fix. And that was also one of our goals, to reduce the number of functional defects that hit production. Again, increase the pace of delivery while improving quality. This one is a quite dear one to my heart, just because at that point when we started working on this, you know, the whole continuous delivery, continuous integration, unicorn, we need to do this, we need to do that. Yeah, fine, we can have continuous deployments because we don't have enough coverage for automation. So it was a strive from ourselves as well as from the business to say, we are behind our competitors, we need to move faster, but we need to move faster in a safe way as well. So not just deploy and then, I don't know, just leave it to fate, what happens in production. So it got us thinking, so what could we do to improve all this? And there's a solution. And it's not alcohol. So what we did, we saw that the majority of the teams in our company were struggling with the same things, setting up their tests. You have to create users, you have to fund your users, you have to log in, you have to, I don't know, open whatever service you need to open. And we were kind of working in that area where everybody came to you and said, I need a user in this environment, I need this, do you know how to create a user and whatnot? And we said, okay, fine. Let's start and build a library that incorporates all these features, right? So everyone can use it, not everyone's doing their own thing and then you don't know how to move between projects. So we started what we call the QA toolkit. I like to call it as, it's a library, a Java library with Spring. It's an in-house library where we started building all these features. It was first to be able to use it in our projects. We were developing new microservices like every 2 months. So we actually needed something to boost the way we start our test automation. And we sat together with the developers and said, why don't we do the same thing you do for, your code? You have something bootstrapped for your applications, why don't we do the same for tests? We started building these and we said, okay, what do we need? We started putting in the feature to create a user, to fund it, to be able to log in, to create sessions, whatnot. And then every time a new person came to the team, you knew that the way to start the automation is by integrating that library in your tests and be able to do that as a top of the button. Another issue we had previously was that people were actually using hard-coded users as well, so it's really hard to run the same tests in different environments just because, users disappear, you don't have the same username, you don't have the same credentials and whatnot. And as well, to actually cope with something like in a test environment, someone deleted the database with all your users. You had to go back and recreate everything. So with that in mind, every time a new person came and someone from another team came and I need a user, oh no, but you need this library to integrate it in your tests so you can create your own users. So what we do now is, and I think like my coworkers somewhere here in the first row can tell you, every new service that is tested and is being built, because we actually kind of do the platform based on microservices, the testing actually starts by integrating that library into your tests. So we kind of made it really easy for people to have everything on the top of their button. It may sound easy, but it was an effort of I don't know how many people, just in terms of internal open source, because we didn't do it as a project. We just did it as something on the side. And after we did it, we went out and said, well, actually we have this, which is kind of going to improve your life. So right now, all new projects start with this automation bit in mind and with actually building the test based on this library. The good thing is, and as I said, right now, it can work in every environment. So that was one of our pain points, and the way we try to solve it is to actually, be able to let people config different environments into the tests. So now I want to run my tests on integration, now I want to run the same tests on QA and prod and whatever, and to really actually make it easy for them without having to change too much to their pipelines. Another good thing, kind of speaks for itself, but once automated, it stays automated. Basically, we had a lot of issues with repos for tests previously. People were doing things all over the place. Some were manual tests, nobody recorded nowhere. Some were writing tests in .NET, some were writing tests in Java. Nobody knew exactly what tests need to be run for which release, and it was kind of painful for us. So right now, I think I can probably safely say around 90% of the tests that are being done are automated through this, and you kind of have like the singular Java repo with all your tests. And for example, even for audit purposes, if you really write really good Java docs, you can actually print out, the Java docs from your tests in that repo to show auditors or managers or whoever is interested in that kind of report what tests have been run, what is the result, what is the output of these tests. And it's quite nice to know where everything is, and everything is with the actual code of the application. So we do the code, and then we do the test in the same language, same repo, same way, so everybody knows to find their way around. Cross-functional team. What it means for us is that when we get swamped, because we have chosen the same language and the same way to write tests as developers write code, is that developers can help when we're swamped. So there might be an instant when we can't finish the sprint because nobody has time to write automation. But because it's so easy for them to just switch on from their code and then go into ours, it's really easy for them to actually come in and say, yeah, I understand. I have to write tests based on this model. It's fine. And I can help, and they can actually improve as well. So it's still a common goal of ours, developers we test together, to actually improve this automation framework and work on it together. And I think if he wasn't so shy, my colleague who worked with me on it first could stay here up on stage and say the same thing. And also what's actually most important for us as well is that we speak a common language. So they can help us debug our tests. It's not something really foreign written in another totally different language that no one can help you with. That was the issue with the tests we inherited from the automation QA dev team, right? It was a room full of people who knew Java, and that automation QA dev team who was contracted to write our automation tests wrote it in .NET, and nobody knew how to start the bloody code. They just left the code, went on with their jobs in another company, and then we were like, oh, but you have automation. Well, yeah, but we don't know how to start it. And that was basically an effort that kind of got thrown out the garbage, just because they were working separately there, nobody knew what they were doing, they actually didn't know what the feature teams were doing as well. So right now, because the feature teams are actually doing their own automation, everybody's aware and responsible for that as well. Of course, not everything is quite so nice. There are some bad parts. So while designing these, we were pretty confident, right? We're like, yeah, I rocked it. I developed this. It's great. I'm just going to plug and play it into my tests. Put 2 asserts in, ready to go, right? Well, overconfidence gets you this. I remember one of my first bugs that I let slip into production. We just had the release for an integration with a third-party provider. Basically, they're actually reading information of your ID, like first name, last name, and whatnot. Just you upload the picture of your ID, they read everything, and they send it back to you in a callback to verify that you are who you say you are. It's something called Know Your Customer, because we have to do that as a gambling company. So we had that integration with a third-party provider. Great, release it, go into production. Cool. Conversion rates, 20%. We were like, okay, we knew there would be some issues with like special characters, like from German or from other languages that we couldn't match it with our systems because we weren't allowing registration with those characters. But actually, when we tested it, we hadn't tested with uppercase and lowercase characters in first name and last names. Because we were using mocks, we were said, fine, mock. We built in a mocking system into the library. Quick and easy, let's mock everything. And we actually always matched things with the same case level. Perfect results every time. Automation run like clockwork, green build. Actually, it wasn't. fixed it in about 2 hours, learned our lesson, move on. It's actually, everybody's talking about automation these days, and everybody's praising it and saying, oh my God, it's going to change the world, and people in business are buying it, saying, oh, you could have caught that with automation, why didn't you think of it? Well, actually, we first started to do this at service level, and we all know that API automation is rather easy than doing front-end automation. And we were really confident in, yeah, we can take that from the API level and move it to Selenium and whatnot, and golden. Well, actually, Selenium in itself has bugs. And sometimes maybe your automation is failing because you can't find the bloody object on the bloody page even though it's there. And we kind of got our asses kicked, let's say, because we had to write a lot of defensive code just to be able to, you know, avoid these bugs and avoid these problems. And it kind of slowed us down. It took us down a notch with this and said, okay, so let's, you know, take a step back and say, fine, we'll try and do API level testing with this as much as possible. Understand that there's the extension of it to front end is not as great as we'd hoped it to be, and actually tone it down a bit and invest more in actually testing, you know, manually and with the devices and whatnot in terms of front end. Debugging. So as we moved from a manual process and some automation to fully automated, we have instances where actually your testing code doesn't work, which is, let's say, a product in itself if you think about it. And then you have to spend a lot of time actually understanding what your testing code does and actually debugging it. Great thing, we have great developers in our team who helped us with this because they kind of face the same problem. But it's really important to actually try and learn and be good at debugging just so you can find the bug within your test as well. Sometimes they're not as obvious as the uppercase, lowercase thing. Sometimes there are more hidden things that you actually made the error in actually writing the code, but you need to find it. And it's not that as obvious as one in the code where you have found the bug. There's also the ugly side. So we went through a lot of iterations with that library. At first, we said, okay, let's do it for our team, and we'll see from there. Actually, as the number of teams that used it kind of grew, we saw that it's not fit for purpose for everyone. And that's actually quite badly designed in terms of we were not able to cope with the amount of changes needed to it. And also the way we used it in our tests as well kind of led to some other bugs being done in production. I distinctly remind myself about my try-catch tests that didn't have an assert fail in them. Perfect, green every time. Except the fact that the operation didn't throw an error when it was supposed to. And, you know, now I write assert fail first, and then I do write my try-catch after that. Also, and I think this is something that we struggle with quite often, is to actually let the people know that it may be more effort to automate something than it is to code the same feature. We all have done or will be doing third-party integrations, right? And it's simple, it's a user story, say, let's interpret this error message from the third party and show something on our website. Cool. But then you have to automate that. And everyone's going to push you and say, no, but this is easy, you should do it. And you kind of go and say, well, they don't have a test environment. I have to build a mock. I have to build all the responses in the same way that the third party is sending, preferably, and not another way, because otherwise it's going to fail. And then I have to write the actual tests. Probably for a developer, it's going to say, fine, 5 minutes, if, then else. I'm going to write that one. But for a tester, and you have to factor that in and actually explain to people, yes, we want to automate it, but this is the cost that's associated with it. This is the effort that's being done with it. Also, we have combinations of we have various fields in a response or various fields in the request. To be thorough at an API level, you have to test every combination of that request and response, and that's extra effort as well. So on that side also, I think our biggest challenge was actually asking for time to rewrite some of the tests we inherited from another team, which at that point we couldn't actually maintain in an efficient manner. And we actually had little team knowledge or little support for those tests, and we actually had to rewrite that. And that was the point where we had to go to the business and say, listen, we have this, we would like to rewrite these tests, which were over 1,000 tests, using this method, but we need some time. Just because once we do it, that automation suite is gone. It's no longer going to be worth it. So what we've learned throughout the process is that you should never be afraid to ask for help. So when I joined and I saw how, being a former developer, and I saw how the way things were done in testing, I was like, okay, we need to find a better way of doing this. However, my Java knowledge was at the level I got in university, so I was definitely not up there yet with some of the more senior people in the company. And I remember distinctly going to a Java developer and saying, okay, I have this problem. Look, this is how things are done. I personally do not know little about how to do it. I know what should be done, and I know what I'd like to see in terms of actually not wasting effort to copy things from one project to another, and then everything is read and then nothing compiles. And actually ask for help and say, let's solve this problem together. And everyone was actually really bought in to help with this. Involve the whole team, don't treat this as a separate effort. As I said, for us, it didn't work, the model with the automation QA dev team, as much as they wanted it for it to work. It's something that the whole team has to have a buy-in in, including manager, including project manager, including PO. Just because it's much easier that way to actually ask for time and understand why are we doing this. For example, we didn't have a project to build this toolkit on. So we actually did it in bits and pieces and asking for, okay, now I need to upgrade something. I need time in my sprint currently. It's not going to be a lot because we were maintaining it across several teams. There were multiple people working on it. But I need some time allocated to actually improve this, actually add this feature. People were starting to request features from us as well. So we had to have the buy-in of the product owner as well, the manager as well, in order to do this. And thankfully for us, they understood what would be the negative impact of not doing this, because we don't have a sticker figure, of dollars or euros associated with doing this. You can't say I'm doing this and the company revenue is going to go up, I don't know how much %. You're going to say, well, you're doing this, but you're avoiding bugs into production that may or may not cost you that amount of money. And planning and designing saves time later. As I said, at some point it became unmanageable to actually upgrade the library and add more features because of the way we created it. We never thought it's going to be that used in our company. We actually just built it for ourselves as a team, and then more and more people showed interest, more and more people wanted to adopt it and wanted features. And we had to do a really big, and I think painful, and I think some of the QAs kind of hate me, a really big redesign at one point, which were breaking changes, and then everyone had to redo all their testing projects and re-import and fix those breaking changes. And yeah, and having thought of it more at that point where we started might have saved us time to not actually do that big redesign. So, where are we now? This toolkit I'm talking about has been adopted by 30 or more teams, and I think it's being used in probably over 200 separate testing projects, let's say, because as I said, we are working in the SOA model and we have microservices, so every service has their own automation and is using this library. Everyone can contribute. We have a small team. We've kind of made it for so long, only myself and some from my team were contributing to the library. However, it kind of got too big for us to manage. So we have kind of an internal open source model where people can actually go in and build features. There's a small group of, let's say, trusted approvers of merge requests and whatnot. But with that being said, everyone can contribute. There were add-ons built on top of it. So someone kind of thought that UI that would expose the same user creation and whatever else other people except testers are interested in, like product owners or commercial people who just want to test in their integration environment but don't have a user. So someone built a UI on top of it. It's plugged in with this, and you can go in and select what integration environment, this one. What's my username? What's my account currency? What's that? And then click, and you have a user there. And basically, right now, there are big features that have been, I think they're released every couple of months, with small adjustments being released every once in a while. People actually try and not bring breaking changes because we all know how many people around the company use it. Sometime, and I think the biggest rewrite was when we kind of merged, so Petty Power and Betfair merged the two companies, and then we had another brand on our platform all of a sudden. So you had to cope with actually duplicating that effort and creating all these setups for the other brands. So that was one of the last major changes that have been done to that toolkit. But currently, yeah, some small features are released, and it's basically treated as a different as a product in our team. Releases are announced. We have release notes. We have changes. We have how to integrate and how to use and how are these features and how are you using it. So that's it from me. Thank you. And now from the fun Q&A part.
Fun part, yes, exactly, QA part.
How important it is for the team, for the QAs, having an automation framework written in the same language as developers in the team are coding?
Well, I think when hiring, I think most of the QAs have a Java background. However, I think what's important for them, and I think from my experience, that if you don't know something and it's something someone can help you with. So if you would write it in .NET and you got to some point where it's kind of challenging for you to find a solution on yourself, you have no one to rely on inside the team. You can only Google, Stack Overflow and whatnot. But right now, it's a matter of something's not working. I'll give it some thought and try and fix it, and if not, you can pair with a developer to actually fix the problem or enhance their automation. And when they come up with solutions, they usually work together in terms of developers and testers.
So is it worth to start the new automation framework from scratch and write it in the same language as the developers?
From my experience, yes. Totally worth it from ourselves. And I was a .NET developer, so if I wanted, I could have wrote all the automation in .NET, but then I wouldn't be able to show it to someone and have the same level of understanding as I do.
Yeah, you told us that you have built. So you worked in the company where the automation testers wrote in the different languages, right? The different components were because different components were written on the different languages, right?
Yeah.
my question is that I forgot my question.
Give it a minute.
I can come back to you. We have next question.
What contingency plan was implemented to avoid redesigns in the future?
So, contingency, I think, is just inherent knowledge of using the same way, so the same design principles that devs use, just from experience saying, if we build it this way, I don't think we're going to need thinking ahead, what are the next big things coming, and saying, I think if we build it this way, I think we're not going to. I'm not 100% sure that it's not going to take, another year, and we need to have another big redesign, or, But the way we built it at first, for example, it didn't have sub-modules that you could import. Just the module we're interested in, you had to import everything. So now we kind of made it as modular as we think makes sense, just to help everyone. And I think input from people who weren't involved in the first place helped us quite a lot, and constant feedback. And yeah, I think from experience and constant feedback, it's the contingency plan, let's say.
Okay, so I continue. So everyone writing on the different languages, but you told that you started to work and to develop your own test framework, right? And it is necessary, I think, to tell what kind of project that was, because
What kind of?
Of project. So it was startup or not?
No.
And no, it wasn't startup. So it's a big difference between startup and the company which can get money from the users, right? So I'm not really agree with you about this, because most startups cannot afford this, because startups need to release like even every day. And unfortunately, they don't have enough resources to work with their own framework at the current moment. So, and they will do this, I think, maybe after they can earn some money, and this will take, for example, a year or two. And yes, all the components at that moment will be written on the different languages. Yes, so I think every company meet this problem.
I think the problem is it's all about the money. This is what it is, essentially, and it's no different a startup from another company. What we actually did is, not ask for resources up front. That's what we did. And we didn't ask for resources, but we used every spare time we had to actually develop this. And when it was mature enough, we went and said, well, actually, this is what it is, and we built this one, and you may want to use it.
Okay, but how did you test? So you spent a lot of time but how did you test then?
We tested the old way as well, and we didn't ditch. So we didn't do like, we're stopping doing what we did right now and starting fresh with everything and throw everything out the garbage. What we did is say, from this point in time, we said, we need to build a new component. What if when we build this new component, we built it this way? And then the effort was not on top, it was included in that project. We said, we want to do it this way. It's going to take you 10 sprints, but 11 if we do it this way. It's going to be easy. And we started with one component, then two components. And then everything else kind of fall into place. We started this in 2012, right? So we're in 2018 now. And we still have some old components that are not on this and will never be. We just wait to throw those out.
Okay, so a lot of time spent.
Yeah.
So when you decided to change the process or bring in the change in strategy, how did you convince the team, especially like those seniors who are there in the team for maybe 25 years, or those people who with those much amount of experience?
So we actually convinced them by showing them what we did. It's not just going and talking about it and say, if we do this, we're going to achieve this and this and this. And we actually just kind of went in and said, well, we did this and it didn't cost you too much extra than, the regular way. But have you seen that we don't have any bugs in production for like the last 3 months? And then we went on and said, well, this project starts. How about we do it this way? Kind of grew. And, they weren't really reluctant. I have to say they weren't too reluctant to actually put effort in once we actually sat down. I think we're kind of lucky that the current head of, which was head of our division in Romania at that time, has a QA background. So he kind of understood, it's a mix. And we sometimes said, right, for this project, because it's a one-time thing, we're not going to do automation because it's not worth it. Actually not this. So we kind of didn't insist on 100%, just because we know as well that it's a give and take. But I think the buy-in was once we actually showed them that's fine, look, we have this cool new API and it's in continuous delivery and it has tests and it's green and it just went to production and, shiny and sparkly and brand new.
And how long it took for you to for you and your team to get confidence of your new APIs and new framework?
I think the first service we actually worked on and we started developing this framework, I think it took us about 3 months to actually, even now I'm not 100% confident in it, and sometimes there's bugs introduced by it, but I think we were at that level at about 3 months when we said, right, I think this is working, couple of releases in, I think we can start advertising it to others.
No more questions? Seems not. Thank you, Angie. Sorry.
Nice to be confused with Angie.
Yeah. This is my mistake, what I made. Hopefully this is the last one today. Raluca, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.